classified and confidential. Detailed report on the aftermath of the police action (military invasion) by the Indian Army of the Hyderabad state in September 1948. Committee members Pandit Sundarlal, Qazi Abdul Ghaffar, Maulana Abdul Misri. Dear Sir, we were asked by the Government of India to proceed to Hyderabad state on a goodwill mission and begged to submit our report. The delegation consisting of Pandit Sundarlal, Qazi Abdul Ghaffar, Maulana Abdul Misri arrived in Hyderabad in November 1948 and left for the Delhi on the December 1948. During this period, we toured through 9 out of 16 districts of state, visiting 7 district headquarters, 21 towns, 23 important villages. In addition, we met over 500 people from 109 villages which we had not visited. Further, 31 public meetings and 27 private gatherings of Hindus, Muslims, congressmen, officials, members of the Jamaatul Ulema and the Ittihadul Muslimin, the staff and students of many educational institutes, the member of Progressive Writers Association and Hindustani Preacher Sabha, etc. were addressed by the member of the mission. Amongst the important personages met and interviewed by us may be mentioned H.E.H. the Nizam, H.H. the Prince of Berar, Swami Ramananda Tirth, Major General J.N. Chaudhary, Mr. D.S. Bakle, the Chief Civil Administrator, Dr. Nal Khote, Messrs. Ramchandra Rao, Ramachari, K. Vaidyas Venkat Rao. At all these meetings, gatherings, interviews, the main theme was creation and maintenance of cordial relationship between the communities. Appeals were made to the people to forget the past and to work unremittingly for the establishment of the peace and harmony amongst themselves. The aim and policy of the Indian Union was also fully explained to them, and it was emphasized that the objective was to provide for the people of Hyderabad a secular government in which all of them, irrespective of religion, faith or creed, will enjoy equal freedom of civil rights and will have the same opportunities for development and progress. It was made perfectly clear that military administration had been charged with a duty of carrying out the policy in actual practice. We understood it practically and pointedly made it clear whenever opportunity presented itself that ours was not a commission on the investigation or inquiry into events preceding or following the police action. All the same, what we saw and what we are told whilst on our tours and in Hyderabad itself, our mind and important of their own, and we feel that we would not be doing our duty were fail to bring to your notice what we learned there. Hyderabad state has 16 districts, comprising not less than 22,000 villages, out of which only 3 districts remain practically, though not wholly, free of communal terms, which affected the state, first during the militant activities of Razakars and then during the reprisal that followed the collapse of the organization. In another 4, the trouble had been more serious, but nothing like the terrible havoc that overtook the other 8. Out of these, 4 had been the worst sufferers, namely Usmanabad, Gulbarga, Bidar and Nanded, in which the number of people killed in the disturbances during and after the police action was not much less, if not more than 18,000. In the other 4 districts of Aurangabad, Bid and Mendak, those who lost their lives number between 3,500 to 4,000. To that, out of the total 25 to 30,000, which at the very conservative estimate is a safe figure of killed in the whole state. These 8 districts account for not less than 90%. On the arrival of Hyderabad, we were told by the authorities that these were the worst affected districts and needed most the good offices of our delegation. We there concentrated on this and succeeded, we might say so, to a not considerable extent in the atmosphere of mutual hostility and distrust. It is a very significant fact that out of these 8 and 4 worst affected districts, Usmanabad, Gulbarga, Bidar and Nanded, had been the great strongholds of the Razakars, at whose hands the people had suffered to the greatest extent in the whole state. In the town of Latur, the home of Qasim Rizvi, which had been a big business center with a rich Kutchi Muslim merchants, the killings continued for 20 days. Out of a population of about 10,000 Muslims, we found barely 3 still there. 2 to 3,000 had been killed and the rest had run away, escaping with little besides their lives and ruined financially. In these districts, as everywhere else in the affected areas of the state, communal frenzy did not exhaust itself in murder alone, murder which does not appear to have spared women or children. Loot, arson, desecration of mosques, forcible conversions, rape, abduction of women, sometime out of the state, seizure of the houses and lands followed or accompanied the killings. 10 of crores worth of property has been looted, destroyed or seized from their owners. The sufferers everywhere were the Muslims, in the hopeless minority of nearly 1 to the 10. The perpetrators of the atrocities were unfortunately not limited to those who had suffered at the hands of Razakars, nor only to the non-Muslims of Hyderabad state. These latter were aided and abetted by individuals and bands of the people with and without arms, who had infiltrated in the wake of the Indian army from Indian territory across the border. We found definite indications that a number of armed and trained men belonging to a well-known (notorious) communal Hindu organization from Sholapur and other towns on the Indian side of border, as also quite a few of local and outside communists participated and in some cases actually led the riots. Killers and abductors, to add that we were informed by unimpeccable and independent parties of instances, happily isolated ones, in which belonging to the Indian army and the local people were seen taking part and sharing the loot. Lest we might be understood by our last statement to imply a slur on Indian army, we hasten to record here and now our considered opinion of the Indian army in Hyderabad and in its officers headed by their capable chief, Major General Chaudhary. Indeed, in the latter we found a man without a slightest tinge of communal prejudice. We found him genuinely anxious and going all out to carry out the settled and declared policy of his government for the establishment of peace and harmony between the communities and the suppression of all lawlessness with the firm hand as quickly as humanly possible. He and his officers and the Indian army on the whole are unremitting in their effort to that end. Under his able direction and the cooperation of his officers, by far the largest portion of the immovable property of which the Muslims were derived and a vast majority of abducted women have already been recovered and restored to the rightful owner and guardians. The work is still going on apace. The military governor and the chief civil administrator, as also most of their colleagues, officers, subordinates, are doing their level best to hold the scale even between the communities. So far as it easily with them, they have succeeded and have done splendidly. But we have no doubt that there was a section in the army itself not equally free from communal hostility, particularly where it was born of sufferings and calamities infiltrated directly or indirectly or near or dear ones in Pakistan. That this hostility did find vent in the criminal acts could hardly be questioned, as little perhaps as the incidents could be helped. From this intensely depressing picture, we turn to incidents, not many unfortunately, that do stand for a silver lining to the very dark clouds. We were given instances by the Muslims where Hindus have defended and given protection to Muslim men and women at the cost of their own lives. The Hindu weavers invariably defended the Muslim weavers against the Hindus and protected them, often at a very heavy cost, including the loss of life to themselves. Many Hindus helped and cooperated in the recovery of abducted Muslim women. Before concluding the summary of the story of atrocities committed on the Muslims, we must affirm that we have not made any of the above statements lightly or without realizing to the full our own responsibility in making them. What we have seen with our own eyes and what we are told not only by the sufferers and their friends but by reliable parties, both Hindus and Muslims, by the known Hindu supporters of the Congress and by the equally known Muslim opponents of the Razakars. These happenings followed close upon the heels of the police action and the consequent collapse of the Razakars organization, which had in the Muslim mind stood as an effective barrier against the establishment of Hindu Raj, the latter being synonymous to the average Hyderabadi Muslim with the demand based on the will of the Hindu majority. The Muslim masses generally to realize that their sufferings were the inevitable reprisal of the Hindu masses to the atrocities committed on the latter only a few weeks before, as they themselves declared, by the Razakars, who had the active sympathy of the practically every Mussalman in Hyderabad. There were exceptions, of course, but it is doubtful if they numbered more than a few dozens. Such of them as dared to publicly oppose the Razakars' activities paid heavily for their temerity. One of them lost with his life. Even those Muslims who traced these happenings to their original cause, the Razakars considered the police action as their immediate cause for which they held the Indian government responsible. Like the Razakars, the perpetrators of these crimes against the Muslims actively encouraged the belief that they had the backing of the administration of the day. Unfortunately, color was lent to this belief, as mentioned before, by some actions and omissions of such people in authority and their helpers as had been unable to purge their minds the communal hostility. The suspicion as regards the good faith and impartiality of the Indian government has been as between the Hindus and the Muslims, howsoever baseless, were thus not the unnaturally outcome of the sufferings of the hundreds of thousands of the Muslims, in which tens of thousands lost their lives and the others practically all that make life worth living, and in which along it may be one guilty individual, 100 appear to have paid the penalty. These suspicions were further aggravated by yet another factor of those who were in the state service before police action. We are appending a list appendix which were mentioned to us. A few were might have had little some substance, but these magnified and used as the proof positive of the hardships inflicted upon the Muslims employees of the state simply because they were Muslim. Thanks to the prompt and effective measures taken by the present administration, although completely free from fear, they yet are not entirely free from suspicion as regards the ultimate intentions of the government of India, in whose hands their future lies. On the other hand, bitter experience has brought home to them the dire consequences of the communalism. Naturally, they now want to live and let live. They would happy indeed to get rid of their distrust in the present regime and to have faith in its declared future policy. That faith had its birth in the protection they have received from the administration of Major General Chaudhary, and its growth has been materially helped their goodwill mission. But something more is definitely indicated. We are therefore taking the liberty of submitting a few suggestions for whatever they may be worth, which in our view would establish communal peace and harmony in Hyderabad. We do not mean to imply that none of the measures indicated in the following suggestion have yet engaged the attention of the present administration. Very probably most of them have, but even so we are presenting list of matters which we are convinced not be overlooked. We mention them in the order of priority which we our view they deserve. Number 1. The foremost and the immediate need is that those who have suffered should receive all reasonable relief. Example, house, land from which Muslims have disposed should be restored to by the, if necessary, of those in present occupation. House which have been damaged should be repaired and made habitable. Abducted women and children, girl children, should be recovered and restored to their lawful guardians, and in case the latter cannot be found, provision should be made for their maintenance, employment, training in some means of earning their livelihoods. Work and maintenance should be provided for those who lost their livelihood, including the provision of capital, implements of trade, etc., as also provision for the maintenance in deserving cases till they are able to earn, or for 6 months, whichever is longer. Needy agriculturists should be subsidized and given all the necessary help for the resumption of their occupation. Mosques should be restored after repairs wherever necessary to the entitled to the look after them, and wherever idols have been installed in the mosque they should be removed. All conversions to another faith should be declared null and void. For the implementation of above, we would respectfully suggest that a mixed committee composed of officials and non-officials, both Hindus and Muslims, should be immediately appointed, and members mention allied ways and matters. Our second suggestion in this behalf is that H.E.H. Nizam should be asked and pressed to circulation from his private purse for the relief and rehabilitation of his Muslim subjects who have suffered so heavily. Pandit Sundarlal, who was invited by the Nizam for an interview, has already made the suggestion to H.E.H. personally, and the latter did not reject it out of hand. It seems to us only fair that the Nizam personally and not the taxpayers of Hyderabad should pay for the relief, the rounding up and the effective muzzling of all wrongdoers and disruptive elements and of activities jeopardizing communal peace is already engaging the attention of the military governor, ably seconded by the civil administrator, and we need only emphasize the necessity of not only the realization in the measures adopted, but of supplementing them unhesitatingly wherever necessary. Our next proposals are submitted not without some hesitation, as we might be considered to be overstepping our legitimate province, but the fact that we have decided to take that risk is the measure of the importance which we attach the following further suggestion. We have already drawn attention to the very real fear in the Muslim mind that a responsible government in Hyderabad state government under the will of the Hindu majority. The time therefore for any radical change in the form of government or in the administration does not appear to be propitious. We would respectfully suggest their postponement for at least 3 years For allied reasons, we would also suggest the inclusion of at least two Muslims enjoying the confidence of their co-religionists in the administrative setup of the state at the highest level and in the effective capacity. Whilst we realize the necessity of retaining and employing in the services only dependent personnel, we would still urge advisability of caution in the making such changes as might lend color to the alleged existence of anti-Muslim or anti-Hyderabadi bias in the minds of the authorities. Lastly, we would suggest that mercy be allowed to the temper justice to the fullest extent in the punishment of wrongdoers. More highly placed, the military government is setting suspected free and is favorably considering the release of all but the worst and proved. We recommend that all those who publicly recant and repeat should be pardoned, and even in the cases where the imposition of the extreme penalty of the law is clearly justified, it may be replaced by a reprieve. These human acts of forbearance would remove once for all suspicions of the vindictiveness or anti-Muslim bias and undue on the part of the Indian government, and so complete the good work so well begun of establishing the permanently peace and harmony between the communities which were in the previous regime literally flying at the throats of each other.